responsibilities, there's a responsibility for the local officers to take what the Curia does seriously and to animate their members toward it. Okay? And again, that's just vitally important, because without that, we're going to limp. And you guys know better than me. It's hard to get Curia officers. It's hard to get people to show up. And part of it is we've never done a good job of reminding ourselves or teaching our members that more important than anything they do locally is the involvement with the Curia. That's vitally, vitally important. And why is that? Why is that? Because the Presidium is not a parish organization. And if that's how you understand your Presidium, you understand it incorrectly. The Presidium does not have its origin in the parish. No pastor founds the Legion of Mary in his parish. A Presidium is founded and established by a Curia. When I found it when my Presidium was established, even though it's at my location, we're not a parish-based Presidium. My Presidium works for the Association of Mary Queen of All Hearts. And when we were working at establishing it, the first thing I had to do, I couldn't just grab interested people, get handbooks, and say, we're now a Presidium of the Legion of Mary. It doesn't work that way. I had to go to the higher council locally, let them know I was interested in a Presidium, speak with them about the availability of experienced legionaries to assist with the foundation, and make sure it was okay. All right? It's in my building, in my space, with people I know, but it's not my operation. And so we have to recognize, okay, a local Presidium is not a local parish organization first. We'll still use the word parish group when we talk to our pastors and for convenience in the bulletin, because it's hard to explain the difference. But the essence of the local Presidium is this. The Presidium is the local presence of the Legion of Mary. See the difference? The Presidium is the presence of the Legion of Mary in that parish. Okay? It's not the presence of the parish in the Legion of Mary. It is the presence of the Legion of Mary in that location. And while we work in communion with the pastor and in union with the pastor, it's always as well respecting what the essence and the life and the work of the Legion really is. And it's vitally important to recognize that. Because, again, everything we have in the Legion, we receive from the Legion, including Presidium officers. Presidium officers are not and never should be elected. Okay? So the custom of Presidium members voting on their officers and sending the results of the election into the Curia is counter to the handbook. Okay? There are no Presidium elections. The handbook has no provision for it. Because Presidium officers are appointed by the council. Okay, that's non-negotiable. That is non-negotiable according. Now, I am not saying overturn everything violently and quickly now. But let's be clear. Let's be clear. Okay? Because lack of clarity does us no good. Okay? I'm going to give you the full hard word. I am not saying go and impose the full hard word immediately. All right? Sometimes you got to prepare the ground. But we need to know. And see, this is one of the ways the Legion goes off the rails. This is one of the biggest causes of damage to the Legion of Mary, is getting the relationship between the Presidium and the Curia wrong. Okay? The process the handbook recommends for choosing Presidium officers, okay, is the Curia president will consult with the local spiritual director and the acting presidium president with regard to who may be officer material in that local in that local group. Okay? One of the duties of the presidium president, who is to attend the Curia meeting, is as that president gets to know his or her members and can see that so-and-so really has potential, those names are to be given to the Curia president so that the Curia president doesn't operate in a vacuum. Okay? That's important because presidium offices are not a popularity contest. And the first criterion for a presidium officer is not, is he or she a nice person? Is not, he or she really knows the faith. The first responsibility of a presidium officer, in every officer description, president, vice president, secretary, treasurer, when the handbook lists the responsibilities of the officers, responsibility number 1 is not run a good presidium meeting. It's attend the Curia meeting. That is the first responsibility. A person who can't attend the Curia meeting is not officer material. Yet. Because the first responsibility. Yeah. Now, honestly, if you can get 3 out of 4 who can attend the Curia meeting, you're doing really good. So when I say that, just recognize that there's the ideal world which doesn't exist and the real world in which we live. But one of the questions that must be asked before anyone is appointed an officer is, do you understand the obligation to attend the Curia meeting? Can you attend? And do you promise to attend? Because that is an obligation of the officer. The officers are not first the representatives of the presidium to the Curia. They are that, but second. They are first the representatives of the Curia to the presidium. And so one of the other roles of the officers is to, especially the president, is to report on the Curia meeting at the presidium meeting. So that the members are kept informed with regard to what the Curia is doing. That flips everything on its head when we catch that, doesn't it? It turns so much upside down for so many. Because many of our members don't look beyond the presidium. And we have to remember the presidium is the local presence of the legion. It's accountable to the rest of the legion for its functioning. And so it's not just the presidium president who is to be concerned with, is the work assignment being done? It's not just the presidium president who is tasked with the responsibility for making sure that the functioning of the legion is authentic. That same set of requirements is given to the Curia president too. And so the point of visitations is so that the Curia can know the local members and can have a chance to see where the local entity needs help, or if something's going really well, to bring that back to the Curia. Next, note that in the Legion system, in the handbook, very little, in fact, next to nothing is said about the training and preparation of officers. Right? The assumption is that officer training and formation happens at the Curia meeting. That's where people learn to become good officers and run a good meeting. Only if they're there. And only if the Curia officers understand and know how to run a good meeting. And so that's an obligation that is placed on the courier. The officers need to be able to run and organize a meeting in such a way, and there's nothing wrong with stopping from time to time to say, you know, when I was a new officer in the Legion, this part of the meeting really confused me, and here's what I learned to do. But one of the points of the Curia meeting, especially, is so that the officers of the Presidia, if they're new, can ask their questions, or can learn from the others. Oh, that's how you're supposed to do it. So that we can see a quality model of reporting, which is not mere reciting numbers. Why? Because the handbook assumes the reporting is not a list of numeric details, which honestly don't say much. I was at a Presidium meeting just the other night here in the Ocala area, and I made the comment that I've been to Legion meetings where or council meetings, and I didn't believe any of the reports because the numbers said very little. They were impressive totals, but all they were lists of things that were given out, or lists of people contacted with no sense of what that contact was. That's not a good report. Because the point of the reporting is not to give a list of what we gave out. You know? And think about it. I could stand on a street corner and hand out 300 miraculous medals. But what kind of quality of contact have I had? What was the difference that made? On the other hand, maybe I visited 5 homes and spent an hour in each one praying with people, and when I was done, I gave a miraculous medal. Well, that's only 5. It looks like a lot less. But the work was much more substantial. And the point of the reporting is never first and foremost, give me a list of what you passed out. That's not insignificant. It's not useless. But it's not primary. The point of the reports, especially reports to the council, you see, and this is the thing, when we focus on numbers, the temptation is to pad the numbers. The important thing is, what were the projects we did? What was the kind of work we've been doing? How were we with the people? What were the obstacles? How did we overcome them? Or what still has us stuck? That's what we want to talk about. That's what we want to report about. And that's what helps the other officers. Because they might be thinking, that sounds like a good idea. I wonder how you did that. If all we have are lists of numbers, we get ourselves in this distributory mode. What we're really supposed to be worrying about is upping our game in terms of how effective we are with the people. So note, I am not saying ignore the numbers. Don't make them central. Don't lead with those. Always find a good report always focuses on what have we been doing with the people of God. How did we meet them? What challenges did we face? What were the fruits? That's the important element. And that's how Presidium reports should go too. A Presidium report, which is just a list of what I handed out and how many people I met, doesn't rise to the standard of what a good report should be. Okay? Again, the member should be able to say something about the kind of interaction he or she had with the people. I'm less interested in hearing that somebody had 25 contacts if those contacts are passing. I'm much more interested in hearing what kind of contact that was. And for a spiritual director, that's important too, because that's how you help the Presidium or the council. You know, the role of the council's spiritual director is to help identify what the problems and struggles are, so that we can begin finding a way forward. And so if we don't report well, we can't identify what's going on. Okay? And why is this important? Because again, work, remember, in the Legion of Mary is assigned. This is important. Again, One of the ways the Legion goes off course is when Presidium presidents either fail to or lose the ability to assign work to the members. This becomes a great problem. Why is this the case? A story. When I was new in formation, and we're a missionary religious order, when I was new in formation, at the formation house, one of our older fathers who had been serving for years in the foreign missions had come back on vacation. And my superiors asked him to come and give a conference for us in the formation house. And so he came in, and we were there, and our formators were there, and this older father from the missions came in, and he looked at us and said, "All right, before you go any further in your process, you have to understand one thing." And so now we're really interested. It's like, here's this wise old father going to give us the wisdom of the ages. He's going to give us the secret to doing this. And so we're all dialed in. And he looked at us and he said, "Not one of you guys has a mission." And we stopped. And we looked at each other and said, "Well, how can you be a missionary if you don't have a mission?" And we murmured among each other, and we're trying to figure out what on earth this meant. Like, did I hear him right? Did you hear what I heard? And he paused, and he smiled, and he let us have our reaction. And he said, "Okay, it seems I wasn't clear enough on what I meant." And so we thought, okay, he's going to rephrase this. And he looked at us. It's like Jesus in the Bread of Life discourse. He just said it again stronger. He says, "Not a single one of you guys has or ever will have a mission. If you think you do or you think you will, you may as well leave now." Wow. And then he said, "The church has a mission. You don't. The church has a mission, and you share that. You don't have your mission." The same principle is true for the Legion. Works are assigned because they're not yours. It's Our Lady's work. It's the Legion's work. It's the church's work. Per the handbook, the Legion of Mary participates in the work of Our Lady and the church. You don't have your own work. If we had our own work, there's no need to report on it because it's mine. I'm only accountable to me and what is mine. Works are assigned because they don't come from us. In one part of the country, there were a group of Presidia. They've been around for a while, but as people got older, their numbers diminished. And they were preoccupied with the issue of preserving the Legion and of growing. And what often happens in the Legion, and this is a very dangerous temptation for the Legion, as our numbers can diminish in some areas, in our desire to grow, we begin compromising our standards. That is always a mistake. Okay? That is always a mistake. And the most dangerous compromise that I've seen made, okay, other than just completely outlandish ones, so assuming we're not compromising to the extent that we're letting in manifestly unhealthy personalities, which should never be done, okay? The most dangerous compromise is often this one. Members of the Legion find people who are good and dedicated and already very committed and involved in half a dozen activities in the parish. And they go to them and invite them to join the Legion. And then they say, "You're already doing Legion work. You can just keep doing what you're already doing." And the president can no longer assign work to those members. Because the deal is, I don't have to change a thing. My belonging to the Legion produces no difference. I've already got my things that I'm doing. You can't tell me otherwise. And those presidia that were so desperate to grow and preserve themselves learned very quickly and painfully that the other aspects of Legion life began to fall away right around that. When the president can't assign works, and when the members have an unhealthy ownership of their thing, we begin to break down. And why? Because it's not my work. It's Our Lady's. It's Our Lady's work. And it's given to me as a sacred trust that I am responsible for. And so that moment of the work assignment is that moment where the I am all yours is made concrete. Blessed Mother, I am at your service. What would you have me do? And then she tells me. As opposed to, Blessed Mother, let me tell you what I'm doing for you today. Which may be a good thing sometimes, but not on a regular basis. Again, this doesn't mean that work assignments need to be arbitrary. This doesn't mean that the president has the right to ignore the members' capabilities. But it does mean that, and it doesn't mean that members shouldn't claim the works once they've been assigned, because we want to be generously responsible for doing them. We want to own them in that healthy way which isn't possessive. But it is vitally important for the president. Again, the spiritual director doesn't assign work. The spiritual director can sit with the president and determine what the works will be. But the work assignments are made by the president. See the difference? The director's role is vital. And why? Both at the presidium level and the council level. The director is there also as the point of contact with the authority and the presence of the local church. And so when the director speaks, he speaks in the voice of the local church. A curia director or a comitium director is there as the representative of the bishop. He's not a visitor, he's not a guest. And when he speaks with the fact that he is the one that the bishop has put in place. Even if he's incorrect, he must be respected because of that. The same way, again, officers in the Legion of Mary come from within the Legion except for spiritual directors. Spiritual directors are always appointed from outside the Legion. The Legion never chooses. A presidium director serves by the will of the pastor. Okay? A council, whether it's a curia, a comitium, a regia, or a senatus, has no right to say to the bishop, our spiritual director will be. That right doesn't exist. Okay? Some bishops have advocated their responsibility, and that is what effectively has happened, but that's not the way it's supposed to be. The system is that the bishop designates who the director is. When the director serves, he serves at the pleasure of the bishop. And that's vitally important to recognize. It's one of the ways the Legion puts a check on itself. Because if we get to pick and choose everything, we have no reliable gauge that we'll have a director who may be able to correct us when we need correction. And so that's very important to recognize. Now the Legion has this check in the system for the director, which is why it's important to try and keep our directors involved and to even help attend to their formation too. But without the spiritual director, again, things can go south pretty quickly. Because the director is there precisely for the spiritual, the moral, and the pastoral guidance that the Legion needs to do its job well and to make sure it's following along the right direction. And so note, the one officer in the system that doesn't come from within the Legion is the director. The director comes from outside by definition, but maintains a vital connection. And so spiritual directors, in a sense, we're tweeners. A spiritual director is free to consider himself a member of the Legion, and he's free not to consider himself a member of the Legion in that strong sense. But the Legion still considers the director to be an officer. Okay? An officer whose concern is not so much assigning the work, running the meeting, but making sure that spiritually and pastorally and morally, everything is run in the right way. Okay? And to be there precisely for those moments where, we do have a problem. Whether it's in the presidium, in the council, how do we handle it? He's there for precisely that reason. But now let's back up again and now look at this, because we see something now here about the essence of the Legion's devotion to Our Lady. The desire is to be truly at her service. If I am at your service, I am not telling you what I will do for you. I am asking you, what can I do for you? This is the point of the work assignment. Okay? The weekly meeting is related to that. It's similar to that. It makes no sense for us to say we're at the service of Our Lady in an organized way, but we don't have time for her. And so the weekly meeting is the weekly gathering of the Legion around and with Our Lady. And this is why the handbook places such curious stress on physically how do we set up the room. Okay? And those details at first can sound trivial, but they are not unimportant. If we don't have a space conducive to a good meeting, we're not going to have a good meeting. At least not on a regular basis. And so that's why the handbook talks about having a table that's large enough for the members to gather around. That's why the handbook is talking about making sure we have a sufficient number of chairs and enough space between them that we're not feeling cramped and crushed. And it's why the handbook is saying we don't want, council meetings are different. Before a presidium, we don't want people at separate tables. One table. And at the head of the table is Our Lady. And this is different. Other organizations, when they meet, if they have an image of Our Lady, where is the image? She's on the wall, right? Or she's on a table or a stand at the front of the room, and we all sit facing her, right? Note that the Legion is different. Our Lady is at the head of the table, and we all sit around the same table with Our Lady. And so the Presidium meeting is the weekly gathering in the presence of Our Lady, who is the head of the meeting. The soldiers gather with their captain on a weekly basis. That's also why the handbook says, and the Presidium officers sit opposite Our Lady on the other side of the table. Now, depending on how big your table is and what the shape of the thing is, it might be that you have two officers here, and one here, and that's just fine. Or you have four in a row. But the officers are placed. Our Lady is here, and the officers are here at a Presidium meeting. So that the officers are facing Our Lady all the time, that they can be reminded they're accountable to her. This is not accidental. There's a strong issue of the presence here. There's really is a spirituality about the meeting and how it's put together. And so the officers, as those who are responsible and accountable to Our Lady for the quality of the life of this Presidium, face her. And then in between the officers and Our Lady, we find the rest of the members. And so again, so that on some levels it also becomes clear. From Our Lady to the officers, to the members, come the work. But the weekly Presidium meeting is precisely understood as a gathering in the presence of Our Lady and around Our Lady. And so what happens at the beginning of the meeting? The meeting begins on our knees. Okay. Physically, not everybody can kneel. That's okay. However, those members of the Presidium that can kneel without expending unreasonable effort or going through needless pain. And I want to stress that, okay? There is no virtue of martyrdom here by saying, I'm going to damage my knees, but I'm kneeling for Our Lady at the meeting. Don't do that, okay? Don't do that, you know? Make a sacrifice elsewhere. We need you to remain active, okay? But the point is, it's typical in a presidium, some of the members can kneel, some of the members can't, all right? Those who can should kneel. It's a false communion, a false symbol of unity for nobody to kneel, because we don't want those who can't to feel bad. The assumption is those who can't know their limitation, and they shouldn't be worried that somebody else kneels, okay? Because kneeling is an important gesture. It's how the meeting begins. The Legion begins on its knees, as it did in the beginning in 1921. So that it's clear submission to the Lord and a prayerful calling upon Our Lady from a position of wanting to honor and a position of need is being done. The first prayer that's said is the invocation of the Holy Spirit. And then, what happens? We pray the rosary. Think about this for a second. In the back of your mind, the beginning of the Legion of Mary meeting has this going on. And it helps to be conscious of it. On the day He ascended, the Lord Jesus said to His disciples, do not leave Jerusalem until power from on high comes upon you, right? And the disciples went and prayed for the coming of the Holy Spirit in union with Our Lady. Note how the meeting begins. Note how the meeting begins. The Legion gets on its knees and says, come, Holy Spirit, and then unites with Our Lady in prayer. And everything that happens in the Legion meeting flows out of this basic moment. We call upon power from on high, and we do so in union with Our Lady. And so there's this mini note of preparation for Pentecost. Why? It's Pentecost that sends the church out. And so the Legion members meet because they're going to be sent out. Right?